I'm Russ Rive. I'm the Technology Director at SuperUber. At SuperUber, we create interactive and multimedia installations for events, festivals, museums, and exhibitions, combining all types of media to create impactful experiences. So to do this, we need a very, very diverse team, because just by the nature of it being multimedia, to combine all these different elements, we're talking about electronics, software, mechanics, design, video, animation, architecture, light design, sound design, you name it, it's in our lab, and we're playing with it. So the diversity of our team is really important. Everyone in our team is really good at a specific thing. But what makes us really special is the overlap, because every person is really good at a specific thing, but at the same time, they're very curious about the other areas. And so it's in this overlap when we get together and have brainstorming sessions where the really innovative ideas are born. Because if you're too focused on what you're doing as a software engineer or maybe as an architect, if you get someone that knows a little bit about what you're doing, but from their perspective, they can give you a whole new idea. And it's these precious moments that we try and bring these people in the room to create these new revolutions that we create. Very important part of the creative process for us is to get to the prototyping phase as fast as possible. Now, today I'm giving you an insight into our creative process, because I want to point out, and I hope it inspires you in your collaboration efforts, the things that we find really important when we start collaborating and how powerful this collaboration is. So the prototyping phase is probably the most creative phase of them all. It's easy to have ideas. You sit in a room and you come up with all these crazy ideas. And so what you need to do is start prototyping as fast as possible. Take the things that you're not sure about, the most difficult things, put them into practice, because that's when you'll really discover what's going on. Sometimes we're prototyping and whole new other ideas come up, or you're interacting with something and it's not at all what you thought it was. If you're making a multi-touch interface, and you only get so far with a keyboard and a mouse. You got to put it up onto the screen to start really feeling what it's doing. It's a totally different experience. An example, it's a very exciting area that we work in is something called projection mapping. And so in projection mapping, you're projecting light onto volumes and surfaces and buildings, and turning these into objects that have light and texture. These are the cubes that we did. Now with this installation, we were projecting with only 2 projectors a sculpture in 360 degrees. So you'll see it in a second. We walk around it. All these faces are being projected, and the software is pre-distorting all this content onto the screens to create this sculpture that just comes alive. Now, in order to do this type of stuff, we have a lot of collaboration that needs to take place. The architect that designs the cubes and sets up the calculations needs to be in sync with the software engineer, who needs to be in sync with the content creator. And to pull this type of stuff off, we need to create our own tools. So it's really important that all the software we create, all the electronics, all the circuits, we have complete control over the creative process. And the only way to do that is to build the tools. You have to build the tools that you're going to use to be able to pull off what's in your mind. Here's another example. We're mapping columns with video graphics. This was an entrance into a festival, creating a magic portal. It was just down the road here. Creating a lot of anticipation for the people outside to enter inside. Another installation, this was one of the more ambitious installations. There's 180 discs on the ceiling, all mapped individually with a network of 12 projectors. And this could be one big screen, or they could be treated individually as individual screens. And it even interacted with the sound of the DJ, so we could pick up the sounds coming off from the bands and interact with the animations. These little dolls are dancing to the beat. An example where you can use it all as a big screen. So, I mean, this stuff doesn't exist, right? So how do you can't wait for the customer or someone to come to you and say, I want this, because this is what comes up in these collaboration sessions. So a good quote from Henry Ford, who did the Model T and the serial production, is he said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Okay, so be confident. If you get a group of really talented and motivated people together to collaborate, you can come up with stuff that's really new, and you should be confident with these new ideas and go out there and do them. Another big part of what we do is the interface. So when we're building these interactive experiences, the interface takes a lot of thinking. We try and get to something we call the invisible interface. Now, when I say invisible interface, I don't mean an interface that's not there, that you can't see. I mean an interface that doesn't get in the way of the interaction. So it's almost as if it's not there. It becomes transparent to the content that you're trying to see. It's something that's really intuitive, something that you don't need a manual for, no need any training. A 5-year-old kid can step up to an invisible interface and have a good time. A 95-year-old man could step up to the same interface and also have a good time. This is what we call invisible interface, and it really is a goal that we strive to get to. Now, a good example that I'd like to mention is, it might seem strange, but it's Helvetica. Helvetica is a font, and a font is an interface to text. So Helvetica was invented in the late 50s during the modernism movement. And before that, all the font had a lot of personality. Every font had its little twirls and twirls. So if you were writing about a dog, you would choose a font with a little twirly tail and a pointy ears. And then in Switzerland, these guys came along and said, the font's not important. The font should not in itself carry any message. The font needs to be transparent, and you should leave it up to the text to convey the message. And that was the birth of Helvetica, the transparent font. You leave it up to the design and the text to tell the message, and not the font. And this has influenced design a lot going forward. So interfaces can be anything. When you think of interfaces, you think, oh, it's a computer interface with buttons or a machine with knobs. But like Jen Lewin's light harps, interface can be light. It can be wood. Danny Rosen's wooden mirrors, where he uses wooden pixels. They can be just your breath or air. They can be sand. Musical sand is an interesting example. One of our installations we did. Liana, my wife, and thank you so much for helping with the presentation. She came in. She's the art director, and she came in one day and said she had an idea to create an installation that was more tactile, something a little more personal, where you could actually touch the interface. And she imagined a surface that was where you would design in sand, and it would be an instrument that you'd play music. So fantastic, exciting. So we all get in a room, and we start thinking about how we're going to do this. And the architect comes up with a great idea for creating contrast. We decide it's going to be a camera that we're going to use as a sensor. The programmer comes up with the algorithms needed to generate the sounds from the designs, and the art director comes up with the colors and how the feedback's going to be. The result was it's a really emotional experience. So it's a little bit contrast, but you're designing in the surface of the sand, and it scans this, and you can actually make music with this. It becomes a music sequencer with the low notes more towards the bottom and the high notes more to the top. So if you wanted, you can compose something, or you could just draw something in the sand and see what sound that drawing makes. So when we create these installations, or anyone really creating interactive installations, what you're doing is you're setting the stage. You're creating the rules. As an interactive artist, you don't finalize anything. You leave that up for the spectator. So we never know how someone's going to finalize their installations. Actually, the best people to watch the most fun are the kids. They have no fear. They dive right in, and they start interacting with our installations in a way that we would never have imagined. And it's a really personal experience. When you give the opportunity to the spectator to finalize, they become co-authors of your piece. And so in that, you're creating a bond with that person, and he creates a bond with the installation, which is a very, very ludic memory. Every time they interact, they can make the result a different thing. So it's a very, very powerful medium, interactive art. So sensors, of course, are really important. Well, I love sensors. Are really important in what we do. They are what enables the interface. And sensors act as an extension of our human body. But at the same time, sensors exist because of the limitations of what the human body can sense. And this is a very good thing. For example, if you take a look at infrared light, which sits just outside of the visible spectrum. You get red and it goes infrared. And it's just there, but we don't have access to it, right? We can't pick it up. So that becomes really useful to use it in our daily lives. I think this says infrared. So you can start using these spectrums just beyond the human abilities to transport information back and forth. If you woke up today and you could see infrared, your world would be chaos. If you woke up today and you could sense radio waves, your world would be chaos. I mean, it's really important that we have these limitations on our senses. And thank goodness we can invent the sensors to take advantage of these limitations and use that for communication. So an example of a sensor that's actually very simple but is also a very emotional experience is a series of installations we called Blow. So in this, you're just simply blowing through a ring to interact with the digital world. The first time we put this together, you would blow poetry onto the screen. So it's a very intimate experience. You're blowing, which is something very ephemeral, which also has a lot to do with the type of work we do. I mean, these interactive digital installations, it's also very ephemeral. So using your breath to interact with it's blowing the model's hair creates a very, very intimate bond through something that is seeming pretty simple. So that the simplicity is really tough to get to. It's really easy to do something complicated and expensive. The tough part is to do something really, really simple and do it really, really well. That's where the talent lies. So you get a concept, and you've got to chip away at the layers to try and simplify it down to the essence. Because once you find the essence, that sets the rules. That's what it's all about. That sets the rules as you start building it up again. To complete the installation. So a good example where we to demonstrate where we found the essence, we were asked to create a game for an exhibition about Pelé in Germany during the World Cup. And so naturally we thought it needed to be a soccer game. So we started doing a whole bunch of research on all the soccer games that were out there. And they're all very, very complicated. So in the end, we came up with something. After reducing it, we reduced it to a simple game of Pong. You got the two sticks and the little ball in between. Now, based on Pong, we started building it back up again because we needed to be able to have more than two people interact. So we had a Pong table created out of 8 players. And it's a really, really simple game. Here you have less than 24 pixels, and there are tears in these people's eyes. They're jumping up and down, doing waves. Their little pixel goals are described later as being spectacular. When you find the essence of something, you don't need to complicate it with all the graphics and so on afterwards, because the brain takes care of that for you. Because if you look at a very simple but really well done thing, your imagination takes care of that. And in this game, when you made a goal, there was a replay of your goal, but it was actually Pelé doing your goal. And so you compared your little Pong goal with an incredible bicycle kick, and at the time you actually thought it was quite as good as Pelé's goal. So, I mean, that's pretty much it that I'd like to say today. I hope that, giving you some insight into our creative process and how collaboration is extremely important in everything that we do, that you can go forward and think about that too, and that you realize really that it's collaboration through motivated, talented people. That's the best way that you're going to transform the world that we're in today. Thank you very much.